Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. If you could all stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, is there any public comment?
I have something very briefly, Mr. Chairman. But also as an elected official, I just wanted to thank the commissioners for having this workshop. I think it's very much appreciated that we can communicate like this. We all know that we're not in the greatest of economic times, that budget constraints are very telling right now, and we have to consider that. So we appreciate the fact you're taking the time to pay attention, listen to us talk about this, and see if we can all leave as happy campers, or at least, if maybe not happy campers, but not as sad campers. But we appreciate it very much, and I know it's time out of y'all's work day because all three of you guys have to work for a living. So we appreciate it very much. So I just wanted to tell you that. So thank you.
Thank you, Art. Any other public comment? If none, can I get a verification of the posting of the agenda, please?
Pam Moore, for the record, the agenda was posted on January 22nd between the hours of 2 and 5 at the locations listed on the agenda in accordance with statutes.
Thank you, Pam. Can I get an approval of the agenda as submitted?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Mr. Chairman, second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Our first appointment, 6A, consideration and possible action, amendment, adoption, abolish or recommendations related to the Churchill County hiring process, including attrition and hiring delay policy, advanced step placement policy, placement upon initial hire, and placement upon promotion. Joe, floor is all yours.
All right. Thank you, Pam, for having this lovely PowerPoint presentation here to help us guide through this. I'll start a little bit to have just a little bit of what we're looking for today, just to help, I think, guide the conversation. So there is currently a attrition policy that is up for the board's consideration on handling in any way you choose. The parts related to the Churchill County Code, the salary, and all those pieces, they can't be amended today. Those are part of the county code. What we'd be looking for is more recommendations or interest in how you would like us to move forward so we can bring back to you further things for you to consider that actually would be adopted at that time. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Next slide, if you would. All right, so we currently have several policies that relate to the hiring process. The first is our position classification plan, and then we have salaries upon appointment, upon promotion, how we fill vacancies when they arise, as well as the hiring delay and attrition policy. I'm going to go through each of them and then sort of give a little bit of a discussion about what the overall purpose of those policies are, do a little bit of a pros and cons of what we do now, potentially do a little discussion of what alternative options exist as they are known. We can obviously do anything that we choose to do, and then turn it over to everybody else to have some discussion on what they would like to see. Next slide. So the position classification plan, this is our salary table. When we talk about the compensation study, that's essentially what this is. Currently, we have a table system where we have grades from 20 to 100. The vast majority are actually within about 40 to 70. And the way our table works is we have a grade and a range table. So every grade is 2.5% up, and every step within that grade is also 2.5%. So say grade 1, step 2 is the same as a grade 2, step 1. This essentially is how we account for people moving up within a particular position, say 2.5% per year, and then changing grades is what a promotion would be. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So salary upon initial appointment. As it currently stands, when a department goes to hire someone, the county code says a position shall be appointed at the beginning step of the range, except as otherwise noted in the chapter, which is the county board can approve an advanced step placement within the range to meet a difficult problem in recruiting or to employ someone with superior qualifications. So, as a standard, every position that comes in shall be appointed at step one unless the board chooses otherwise. Go ahead and do the next slide. Salary upon promotion. This is a similar piece. When an employee is promoted, there is a statement they shall be placed at the next, at the step in the range that is a two-step promotion in pay over what they were, so essentially 5%. So if you were making $100,000, you'd be placed at the next step, which is $105,000 at the new grade in the range. Again, the board has a relief valve here that it can approve an advanced step placement at the new range to meet a difficult recruiting problem or to employ a person with superior qualifications. Next slide. So the filling of vacancies. This is somewhat debated right now, but the sum of this is when a position opens, instead of the board having to take an action to fill every position that comes open, the board has said, you can fill these positions. Traditionally, the filling has been done at the entry-level position at the first step in the range. So if, for example, you have, say, HR, I have a HR generalist and an HR specialist position in HR. One is more advanced than the other. When Kim got promoted to the manager position, created an opening, I would be looking to fill at the entry-level position, which is a specialist, at step one. There is, an interpretation to be made that is, well, if it was budgeted, I could fill at any step in the range at any position that was previously in existence. So, for example, Kim previously left as a generalist, so I should be able to hire a generalist all the way up to whatever step in the range she was. And that has some merit and some, obviously, complications as it relates to the budget. Next slide. So the hiring delay and attrition policy. So I'm going to sum it up very briefly. I think we've all talked about it before. But essentially what's on the table right now is a 90-day delay before recruitment to fill vacancies. Except in specific circumstances, and those have been outlined within the policy to say these are the positions we either don't want to have a gap for or how you want to handle those particular positions. Again, that is held at the, currently there's a board for that. The county manager, myself, Sherry, and Wade would be on that board, and then there's an appeal from that board to the commission. The second part of that policy is an attrition piece. And that's relevant and important for every department to be looking at and saying, look, I've had this position, say, for some time. It's been, say, 10 years that employee has left. I need to take a consideration on whether that position still is needed, whether there's an ability to consolidate that position with a different position, or whether there's some type of technology that could replace that position that would ultimately be a savings. All right, so next slide. I want to talk a little bit about sort of the purpose of all of these policies. So the Board of County Commissioners exercises budgetary authority for all of Churchill County. And personnel are our single largest cost. About 60% of our total expenditures are personnel related. And as we've talked about, all those policies that we just had, they reflect the board's strong interest in ensuring personnel costs are controlled on a forward-looking basis, not on any particular budgetary year. So all of the personnel decisions that require a change from, say, entry-level position step one come to the board. And basically that is the board's commitment to say, I know that every position comes in at that entry level, and so the work is being done as affordably as it can be done. And so when I come to budget, I can accept that all of the personnel that have come are being filled at the lowest level and at the cheapest budget as could have been achieved. And that's why when we look at our budget right now, we come in and we say, well, personnel costs are this, and really there isn't a lot for you to be considering at that time. So go ahead and go to the next slide. I want to give a little bit of an example, I think, on sort of what is, I guess, driving on personnel costs and sort of what the pros and cons are really about. So I'm going to take an example for HR. So say I come to the board and I say, you know, board, Kim and I are just absolutely swamped, and I really need another person. I just can't get all the work done. And I look at it and I say, you know, the cost for a new employee, PERS and salary is going to be $100,000. You keep it even so that the math is pretty easy. And you look at it and you say, well, you know, I can scrounge $100,000 together. We're going to have to take a little bit here, but we can do it. And so you approve that policy for me, or that hiring for me. And I go out and I fill that position, entry level, step one's $100,000. Then, since we have 13 steps, I'll say 13 years goes by, the best boss you've ever seen, and nobody ever wants to leave. And so that employee is still there. They've had regular merit increases the entire time. It's been 13 years for the budget, and say we've had relatively steady growth, 2.5% per year in the county. So CPI has also been 2.5%, and so we're relatively what you would say is the same, right? So we've had 2.5% growth, 2.5% increases, everything across the way. Here's kind of where it turns into an issue, is assuming this board has done 2.5% COLAs to match the 2.5%, that same employee who was $100,000 when we employed her, 13 steps, 13 years, well, inflation would adjust that to $138,000 for COLAs. So she'd be $138,000 as COLA'd, and the county would have had revenue increase on that original $100,000 to $138,000 as well. But because of those merit increases, she gets an additional 38% moving from step 1 to step 13. And so that person was actually going to cost us $190,000. So there's $50,000 there that have essentially not been accounted for at the time that I hired that position at $100,000. And so over time, the county averages that out, right? Not everybody gets a new employee every year. We have 300 employees, and so that averages out over time. But the way we account for that now is some departments are more junior, they have lower costs. Some departments are more senior, they have higher costs. We aren't going individually employee by employee and saying, you know, you're kind of weighing on the budget. I got to let you go because you're just too senior. That's not what we've been doing. And so as we look at this, I want the board to kind of keep in mind that, you know, there is going to be departments that are, you know, more senior, and there's going to be departments that are more junior. And we have to sort of consider how these are going to have impacts when we go to a budget process or a hiring process that accounts for that eventuality. Because HR can't absorb a $60,000 change over, say, 13 years just under regular revenue increases. Now, over time, that averages out, and that's how we've handled it across the county, is by saying, when we look at our current policies, if I say when the person leaves, you're going to hire entry-level step 1, that accounts for the seniority that exists in another department. So let's go to the pros and cons. So currently, this is a board-controlled process. So anytime somebody wants to have an advanced step, wants to hire, say, a senior planner, as we came the last time to say, look, my department doesn't have anybody who's going to be able to do this. I need somebody, and the board has that control. In general, the way the policies are drafted, we lower costs. Costs are lowered by pushing and incentivizing the selection of less experienced entry-level people to fill positions at the first step at the entry-level range. The board ensures that multi-year costs are reduced and future budgets are being considered on a county-wide basis by saying if everybody follows this trend, our average employee costs are lower. And because it's considered across the entire county, the ability to balance high seniority positions in some departments is matched with junior seniority in others. We reduce any risks of layoffs or furloughs because ultimately this board knows that it made that decision, and so there's a certain incumbent responsibility with making those decisions. And then finally, there's more control of decisions to match the commission's priorities and your budgetary needs because essentially you have made those decisions. Let's talk about the cons. So, obviously you as the board have less direct understanding of a department's needs. What is needed on a particular department for a particular position, what an individual who's come in and interviewed with you, what exactly that looks like. You're not going to have that same level of information as the hiring authority, the appointing authority does. Again, less efficient selection and hiring process. Currently, obviously, any negotiation starts with, look, I can offer you entry level step one, but if you want more than that, I have to go to the board. And that means it'll be at least 2 weeks before we put it on the board, plus an additional period of time for you to make your decision, for that decision to be finalized and then notice to be done. So it takes a little time. We lose some applicants potentially during that period of time. Less ability to recruit more senior talent. And that can be, when we advertise positions, we advertise the entry-level position, and we have a range. And again, when we have that conversation, we say, look, when we make an offer, it's going to be at this entry level or at this first step in the range. And, some people say, well, I don't want to bother with the whole board thing. I'm good. Some cons. There's sort of, I'm putting less responsibility on departments to assist in managing personnel expenses. And that really just comes in the form of the board has taken that responsibility on. And each individual department, they really don't have any say. And so they aren't actively looking in that direction to say, I'm going to do these things, because the board has already taken that responsibility on. And then more conflict, less collaboration on fitting personnel into a budget. And that is, this board will, the way you've done it says that you're going to do it this way, and so it creates conflict on what exactly is it that you want to see. Every time somebody comes to you for an advanced step, you're put in a position where you have to say, I have to balance the full county versus an individual department's needs, and that could be somebody who actually truly needs that, but you're in a position where you're trying to figure it out. So I want to just sort of talk options. Obviously, we have a model. The current model functions, and it has worked this way for, I think, since 1996 is when I see all of these codes were adopted. And so it is a budgetary method that has essentially stood at least 30 years to say, across this period in time, we haven't had large layoffs or furloughs or things that relate to personnel costs exceeding our ability to pay. There are other options. Sort of larger counties especially have a different model where they do it department by department to say, look, department, I've given you a certain amount of money. And that is the amount of money you have, and you have control within your department to hire at whatever level you think fits you, to promote within that level to what fits you, but you can't go over the number. And so if you go over that number, there's just no money for that, and so you can't. You have to come to the board and try and convince us that you're going to need to on any individual occasion, but you're kind of responsible for your own budget. And I wanted to a little bit talk on the example I gave earlier and why this is typically a larger county solution is if you are Washoe County or Clark County, any individual department you have has more employees than the whole county has here. And so when we average risks, higher seniority, lower seniority across departments, it's easy to manage those risks across a department with 600 people. It's very difficult to do that when you have a department of 3 or 4. When your seniority on, say you really do, you keep all those people, you've got a department of 3 people, everybody has been there for a long time, you're going to be overweight compared to, say, standard growth. And that puts, I think, a little bit of pressure for smaller departments especially, but as we move towards, say, if we did adopt something that moved towards, each department's going to be responsible for their own piece, sometimes through no fault of the department, just regular growth is going to be outsized compared to regular revenue growth. So that is a type of policy. There is an ability to do a little bit of a mix, right? Something along the lines of, a salary upon initial appointment, right? You could say, look, we're going to have a policy that says instead of everybody will be at step 1, we could do something along the lines of, the hiring authority has discretion, say up to step 4 or 5 or whatever the board chooses, and we're going to have a policy that says 0 to 3 years is step 1, 3 to 5 is step 2, 5 to 7 is something along those lines. And that's sort of where the board maintains some control but gives some latitude as well. And I think that's sort of what I want to talk about today and get advice from the board and your viewpoints on how we would like to proceed, because if we're going to change models or tracks, there's a lot of work associated with that. We'd have to be bringing, obviously a lot of information to the board, and a lot of information would need to be gathered in terms of what sort of that base number would be and what policies would back that would make it work for a county of our size.
Any questions or comments from board or staff? Anything you guys want to add?
I have one question. If you give a department or departments a certain amount of money to do with what they need to do with, how does that impact subsequent budget years? For example, if the next year there is no growth, but due to our policy with merit increases and potential, well, if there wouldn't be a COLA, but merit increases, how does the department or departments handle subsequent years after that? Or what would you see there?
So ultimately, the board is still going to maintain a budget, right? And so there would still be a budget process. People would still come in and say, hey, I have this as my, I guess, default number because there's been no growth. You had exactly this much money last year. You have exactly this much money this year, but I'm going to have increases in personnel, et cetera. And the board would have to say, okay, well, that means we're going to have to cut somewhere, right? And that could be services and supplies. It could be we're going to put less money in capital. It's still going to have a piece of that process. But it would be something that you'd have to look at and say, well, is this going to be a long-term issue? Is it something where that particular department needs a structural change, or is it something that is, okay, we happen to have a bad year this year, revenue-wise, and that's causing this issue, and we're going to tighten somewhere else.
Any other questions? Or let's open it up to conversation?
I'd just like to hear from everyone else before we get,
Yeah. Yep, go ahead, Art.
This is just a question. Joe, I didn't notice any differentiation between elected department heads and department heads who are directly under the county manager. He's their boss, and he effectively can control what they do because he's their boss pursuant to your directions. Elected department heads are a little separate animal. And did that factor into what you were thinking at all, or should that be a factor?
So I guess I'm going to put it this way. I believe every county employee works for an elected person. The county manager works for these 3 elected individuals here, just like Lane works for you. And so every single county employee is responsive to an elected group of people. And so while I believe that there's different requirements across different departments, overall the policy structure should be amenable to all of the county's employees. And if the board has an intention in terms of when I say, well, departments are going to be valued differently, that would be up to the board on whether they want to have all of the county manager's departments considered and has sort of put the onus on him to have all of the county departments controlled, so that he would say balance planning and social services, as opposed to social services and HR and planning all being responsible for themselves. Ultimately, I believe that the county manager should be responsible for those positions, and the elected departments should be responsible for their own under this type of model.
Ward Khan's less direct understanding of department needs. However, the county manager would have an understanding of the department needs because he is their supervisor, as I understand the structure. He's their boss. He hires and fires department heads pursuant to the will of the board. Whereas elected officials, for the most part, most elected officials are dealing with a very specialized area of service, more so than some of the others. I mean, and for that reason, they're the ones who have the best knowledge of what their department needs. How would that be a con if you had the county manager making decisions about elected officials' personnel?
I'm not sure I follow.
He's on the board.
I'm not sure I follow your question. This is a
that's
statement.
a con for us 3
This is
over
the
here.
con for the
It's a
board
con
of
for
county
us 3
commissioners.
because we don't know your guys' actual department needs. It's not a con for Chris or the board. I think when it says board, it's, the Board of County Commissioners. And so if we stick with the current hiring, delay, and attrition policy, it's a con for us because we don't know your guys' actual department needs. And I guess yes, you're correct. Whether it be you guys are, advocating, arguing with Chris about your department needs, and then that should be relayed to us, and that's a conversation we could have, yes.
Department heads do not have an appeal to you because Chris is their boss. Is that correct?
Correct.
So that's a little bit different in the structure. Okay, I would just thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments?
I just want to put some general knowledge out for the board. Over the last 10 years, we went from 197 employees to 258 employees, so that's 61 employee increase, which is a 30% increase in employees in the last 10 years. And population within the county over the last 10 years, just from the governor's census, it went up 15%, just for your general knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry, any other questions or comments?
I just want to piggyback on that, and I think, I don't want to say it's misleading, but we have picked up a couple of, I mean, we added CNHD, which, oh, okay, thank you. Okay.
You still have all the other COVID positions that have been, acquired during that time as well.
Just Lane Mills for the record. I just want to thank Joe for an excellent presentation outlining all these pros and cons. I think he did an excellent job on that. One of the things that you all are, in charge of the FISC, and one of the things that's outside of everybody's control is the PERS, which has gone up 10% over the last 10 years. And so that's something out of our control. And so I get where Joe's coming from, and he's highlighted these pros and cons. I will indicate that, we did just fine without the hiring delay attrition policy for a very long time. And as you will recall from your tours that you did the other day with hitting all the departments, when you hit HR, HR told you that the absolute bare minimum for a hiring for them to get somebody on board is a minimum 90 days. So the county's going to get savings no matter what, according to HR's little handout that they handed you. There's going to be a 90-day savings even if you scrap this hiring and delay and attrition policy. So that's food for thought there. Because we didn't always have that. It was a product of the great financial crisis. And we had all these other things in line too. So I think you have a lot of options to deal with. It's not we don't have to do a wholesale rewrite of everything. It could just be tweaking that one policy, going back to what we had before, where you're still getting those 90 days of savings for the county, because that's just a natural savings when you have that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Lane. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I would just say that was one of my big concerns is number, on the hiring delay. So we wait 90 days, then you wait another 90 days, and then you got to have a meeting, First of all, you wait 90 days, you have the hearing to see if it's going to move forward. That's an unknown amount of time, really. Say it's a couple weeks. And then you add 90 days that it takes HR. And when they decide they need somebody, now we're 6, 8 months, 9 months out, possibly, before you can recruit anybody. So that was a concern, and we've missed out on maybe some applicants in that amount of time. And we all know it's not easy to recruit for a lot of these positions. I would say it's hard to recruit for any position at this point. So I think we've set ourselves back by doing this.
By doing this and, going back to the 1996 policy, or just this recent policy?
Just the
with
recent-
the cost savings
the recent
associated? Okay. Yeah, and I would agree with you on that.
When it goes, I'm not saying there's not cost savings, but to what cost?
Yeah, I was included on that, and then the prior, commissioners as well. We put a number associated on what we wanted to save per year off of delaying positions. And I would agree with that. I think that damaged us more than it benefited us, and that's why we're having this meeting now, is to look at what we need to do. So, any other questions or comments?
I'd just like to comment that, agree with comments that's been made by the commissioners. And I look at this as when we're in a supervisory role, you're qualified to make certain decisions. So if we were to give the elected officials some leadway, and County Manager Spross has leadway, and someone leaves their department, they have to make that decision. Do I really need someone? Do I need them forever? Can I convince people and show people that position's needed? So that takes away, we sort of have to find the money to fund that person because we have proven that they're needed. So when we do the 90 days or whatever, I don't personally think that's necessary, because if there's someone leaves and it's in their budget, I feel that, County Manager Spross, if he needs someone, he needs to get it listed in the paper and get it hired. If elected official needs someone, get them hired. But come next year, things are backwards. That's why you're in a supervisory position. Okay, I don't have enough money. I've got to figure out how to make this work. And if the only option is to remove an employee, well, that's why we hired you, or that's why you were elected, is to make those decisions. They're not fun decisions, but decisions have to be made. I make them every day in business. Everyone makes them every day in business. That's just business. And we have to sort of look at this from a business angle. We can't run behind, and we can't, have too much. And I think as we do our department tours, just a little bit of information that we get there, it's sort of obvious the amount of workload, when you see what's going on in those departments. Like even in just daily operations, when we're visiting with someone, we see what's going on, so we can sort of determine, are they really working, or do they have too many people? So a simple policy, I think, is better. I think giving the department heads, County Manager Spross, the lead way to lead his appointed staff as he sees fit, because that's his position, similar as to the electeds. It would be your question to answer if you did it wrong. And that's all I have at this moment.
And I don't think any of us, and I'm just speaking for myself, and the other people can tell me I'm wrong, but I think most of us could live with an absolute 90 days. If you say, okay, from the time that person is gone, you cannot have another person in that position for 90 days. That's the way it was originally written. You could do that. But you can do the recruiting in the meanwhile and do the processing in the meanwhile. They just can't go on the books and start taking money until that 90 days is up. And that would still be a savings for the county. It would still be an evaluation time for the departments, but it wouldn't be this forever war of saying, well, it's been now 120 days, or it's been now 360 days, and we still hadn't gotten through the recruitment process. So if we were able to start recruiting from the time they left and not fill it for the mandatory 90-day period, that's fine. Then I think we could, my department especially, could live with that. That's something that's knowable and something we can work with. Part of the open-ended process that we have now, as Joe described it, I mean, it takes them 90 days to process someone after they get a candidate, and it takes our office 90 days to get proper candidates lined up and looked at and make a decision about it. So now you're looking at half a year. And that's not why the original policy was written. But I think we do realize that we need to make some savings. We need to be budget conscious. That's absolute. That's a given. I know most of you guys are in business and y'all deal with that every day, but the proper role for all of us as elected officials is to look at it like a business and say we're running the people's business and we don't need to squander any money. So maybe this 90 days is a good idea. But then having it as an absolute and saying at the end of 90 days from the date of the vacancy, that can be filled and not have to go through all this, what creates a certain amount of friction between personalities which shouldn't exist. And you just eliminate it. You know what everybody knows what the deal is, what the timelines are. And if Chris thinks one of the departments he's running doesn't need that person, he can talk to the county, the head of the county, and talk to them about that. It's our job as elected officials to make those same kind of decisions, as you pointed out. If we don't need to fill that position because the situation has changed, then we shouldn't be hiring just to be hiring. We all know that. That's old school.
And if I could, and as Art says, our office could live with that, because it is 90 days from when they leave. You advertise for 30, you evaluate, you get people in for interviews. By the time they decide something, and maybe you have to go to the commissioners for that advanced step, and then they have to go give 2 weeks, you're at 90 days no matter what. But I would just say, as far as like, if you guys are thinking of a policy, sometimes there are some mission-critical pieces of the puzzle here in the county, and I would say like your planners are one of those mission-critical people, that if somebody's going to be leaving in 6 months, that we should be hiring today and get that person on board before the other person leaves. I mean, I think there is some mission-critical pieces there that you need to carve out some exceptions for in any kind of policy. And when you have very small people, like we only have 2 people over there that do this mission-critical thing, and losing just one of them is really a big deal. And so I just suggest, if you were going to go do that hard 90, that there's some flexibility built in, because as we look around the county, and I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, every other part of the county, but I know at least at the planning, that boy, that really hurts, and that has an effect countywide. It has an effect on businesses and growth and all sorts of things that are really important, and so we need to have some exceptions in there.
If I just take a moment, sounds to me like from what I heard from the commission, there is an intent or a desire to just scrap the hiring delay policy altogether. And so I think if that's what I've heard. If that's the intention, maybe we could move on towards, I think, some of the further discussion about how you would want to see some of the other stuff moving forward. If I didn't hear that correctly, let me know, but I thought that's what I heard.
Can I make a quick comment?
Go for it.
As long as I've worked here, I've been in the county over 17 years, it has been always an uphill battle to get the county to invest in our technology, in our infrastructure, in our computers. We fight with this on a regular basis. And in my opinion, from a business standpoint, that's, in my experience, you have to invest in the technology if you want to find the efficiencies. And so I would just like to see the county encourage more growth in the technology. What other programs or applications are available in each of the departments, because everybody does something different. What's out there that could make your department more efficient? And so in the long run, then you would see the savings there and be able to address your employment issue, because you've already put things in place to do the work. You can't just cut everybody off and expect the existing people to do the work, because sometimes that doesn't happen.
And I will say that's why I like the model that some of the bigger counties do. If you need technology, hey, we had an increase in revenue of 4% this year. You spend your money in your department how you see fit. I mean, you're going to want to run it as efficient as possible, and then it's up to you.
That's why the assessors have we lobbied for a technology fund, and then that way we have that fund where we can help fund our offices. And like I said, my office has had the same amount of people for 20 years, even though we've seen a growth in work.
And Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong, we can have a 10% slush fund, rainy day fund. No, slush fund, rainy day fund. What is it at? But we can have up to 10%, correct?
Yeah, we can have up to, it
That's my
has not been
question.
funded in the last 5 years. It's actually gone down when we did the flood.
So when I look at that and I look at, okay, revenue went up 4%, you might not get the full 4%. We need to fund the rainy day fund up to the 10%. And so there's a lot to flesh out there, but I think it's a model that might work well.
And I agree, but funding a rainy day fund means that every department that has a rainy day fund needs to be able to, and when I say rainy day fund, it's those, well, we think this might happen, so we have to put some money in there for that. We would have to be able to recognize that, take that, and put that in a rainy day fund. So if that happened, it wouldn't be coming out of the department, it would be coming out of the rainy day fund. And I think that would help fund that.
So let's say I wanted to add a module to my application, which in the future I do have one. that we could add that would be a huge time saver. Those things, if you had that money set aside, then you could actually move it over and add it to my software contract and be able to budget for it that way.
I think something, and this is just me talking, I think something that you know you want to buy would still have to be a capital outlay. But these are more we're putting some money away in case we have a jury trial, or we're putting some money away for Yucca Mountain, or whatever that is. Those would all kind of go away from the department and go into a rainy day fund. And I may be talking out my rear end, because Shan,
I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to interrupt this conversation because this is about the hiring and attrition delay, and so this is kind of more budgetary stuff. So let's get this kind of back on track to the actual policy at hand.
And
But we hear you. Yes, we hear you. But it's not on the agenda. I just don't want to get in trouble for that. So, and this is more that's more budget related,
and that's coming soon.
and that is coming soon too, though, as well. Yes.
I wanted to comment on Mr. Mallory's comment about the 90 days. It doesn't really, you're okay with in your department. There's departments that 90 days is detrimental. And
We could live with,
well, you could live with 90 days, but someone else might not be able to.
From start
But-
to finish, yeah.
But how I look at it is I assume that you are a good supervisor and you're going to be prepared to make that decision the moment someone gives you notice, that you already know how many people you have to have. You're consistently evaluating how many people you have. So 90 days to me, I don't like 90 days because I think it impedes your department to get your work done.
Thank you.
I'm
Well,
going to go ahead.
And I think there's situations that can come before the board before the 90 days. I mean, our hands are not getting, this can't be tied to where we can't hire an attorney because it hasn't been 90 days, because that attorney's going to go away. So I think in situations, we still need to have some latitude in here.
I've got two things. Yeah, I agree with you that you need some latitude, and I think that's kind of the way the old policy worked, is that, you know, if it's kind of those higher priority ones didn't really follow that 90 days. It was the lower priority positions that were kind of targeted. And then to go back to what your question, I guess, is that, you know, this board, you're getting the inclination that we just want to scrap the 90 days. I do want to call the elephant out in the room over in the corner, and that is the comp study. And what that's going to look like, and don't want to go too much in the comp study because, again, different subject, different agenda item. But if that comp study comes back and it's, you know, goes up 10%, falls 10%, who knows what it's going to do? If we just script, this is a tool for us to use for a cost-saving measure. And sure, it has its flaws and its tweaks, and we can tweak it how we want, but this is a tool that we can use for cost-saving measures. And so while I would love to turn that responsibility over to department heads to hire, and, you know, we give you a budget and you do what you want with that budget, I like that idea. I don't know if this is the year that we want to pursue that, just with, again, the elephant in the room looming over us. That's something to keep in mind as well. I would love to turn that power over to you guys, and basically we just tell you have a 2% increase, do what you want with that and figure it out. That's a lot of weight off my shoulders. I get, you know, that'd be fine by me. At the time right now, I'm fine doing that job right now, but just something to keep in mind is that comp study, and is this the right year to tackle something that we have never tried, have never looked at, don't really know what's going to come out of it.
I respect those comments. I don't know that moving forward to a different position I don't find it to be too detrimental, because if we don't have the money, we don't have the money. They can't do anything anyway. But the policy's in place, and we're moving forward. If we keep waiting, we'll be in the situation that we're in with, let's just say, some of our capital improvement projects. We keep waiting. So I'm ready to make a difference.
And again, I'm all for that. I'm just I'm looking at you guys kind of because, you know, if we move this route where you guys take on that responsibility and it comes back that the comp study's X amount, we got to cut 5%, that responsibility is back on you guys. That's no longer, you know, in years previous, you've kind of been able to point the finger, not that you have, but you could have pointed the finger and said, well, this is what the county commissioners did and said. And now that is going to fall on your guys' shoulders.
Joe, did you have something that you wanted to you seemed like you wanted to talk about something sort of newer or more?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, obviously, because personnel is such a huge portion of our cost, that's why I think this budget piece is coming up. It's an intertwined piece, right? Which is how we choose to handle personnel is more than half of the budget. And so I do think that what you're talking about is relevant to how you want to move forward with hiring, and how you want to consider hiring in the future, specifically as it relates to whether that's going to be held as it currently is with the county commission, where essentially when something comes up, we come to you like we have been for the last couple of months. I'm sure you've seen all of those agenda items either for advanced steps or for hiring positions that either aren't vacant yet or are at a higher than entry-level position. And so that's currently how things are done, and that makes for more agenda items. It does add delay to the process, but it does continue to give this board its flexibility. And there is an ability to say, you know, I think we've considered some of this. I'd like to hear more about, say, the comp study or whatever before you make a decision. We could have additional workshops, whatever the board wants to do in considering whether it wants to start moving forward this year. Like I said, today is not, I think, a decision on what you want to do for sure. Some of it is just guidance as to whether it's of interest at all, so that we can bring it to you and say, this is what it would look like. Do you want to make this decision? It is a lot of work to put together a plan, and not an insurmountable amount of work. It is something we would do. I just want to ensure that before I do that much work, that it is something the board is at least entertaining. It would be unfortunate to do all of that and then have the board and the electeds and the department say, I don't want that responsibility. I don't want to do that. I prefer the way it is.
And just looking at the policy, C1, when you go through there, to me, that should all be done immediately after an employee leaves, all those steps. And then you can go right into the 90 days. Should we have them meet with the board or the commission and say, hey, we've already done this, we need this person, we've already went through all these steps, and it meets the criteria. Seems to me like that should be ahead of the 90 days wait.
And so potentially, just clarifying a misunderstanding here, the 90-day delay is not from the date that the position review board would meet. It'd be 90 days from the vacancy. So sometime within that 90 days, there would be that meeting, but the delay doesn't get tacked on. It's...
And that was a complaint about before.
Well, okay, with all due respect here, I think that this is why Art continues to say there's a difference between elected and department heads. Because if I lose an employee, why am I going to go to the county manager and explain why I need an employee and have to justify an employee? I'm the one that's elected. I'm the one who has to go out and explain my fiscal responsibility to the community. If he doesn't even know what I do in my office, how is he going to tell me whether or not that position is important?
You're not coming to me, you're coming to the position review board.
Okay, which is the county manager, the chief financial officer, and the district attorney.
And the HR director.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
I'd like to give some direction to explore something new. And I'm not a fan of this attrition policy. I've not been a fan of this attrition policy since day one. I think it impedes our future and it impedes our workability amongst everyone. So I'd like to see if we can maybe come together and have some kind of direction for, if it's Mr. Sanford that's going to be putting it together, some kind of policy that puts it in the hands of the elected officials and County Manager Spross that sets their parameters when someone leaves. We identify certain parameters that they can operate within. And then if they want to operate outside those parameters, that's when they come and get on the agenda, and then we have a discussion of why they're there and do we think it's a good idea or a bad idea. I think I personally want to move that direction. You have thoughts there?
I agree with you. Again, just the thing that's always in my head is right now is the comp study and what that's going to look like and how much that's going to change things for us. Again, we don't know whether that's going to be beneficial or what that's going to look like budget-wise, I guess I should say. So I definitely want to pursue something new. I'm totally behind that. Again, it's just a lot of unknowns right now in this current spot.
So just to help, maybe I'll try to help you there or make you feel better about it, is if we move this forward and we did a new policy as sort of mentioned, and then the attrition policy just comes in and we have to make some tough decisions, that's where we as a board can interject real quick and say, hey, we have this policy, but we control the budget. We can stop and say, hey, we need to do a 5% reduction. If everybody wants the comp study to be implemented, then we need to do a 5% reduction across personnel. I mean, that's simple, it's easy, and I don't find that to be detrimental until we get this rolling with the comp study. I just feel like putting this off for another year, putting it off for another 6 months is just detrimental, and we're impeding the future.
And as it's been mentioned before, we have the authority to do a complete hiring freeze at that point.
Also true, I don't want it to get there, but yes, I mean, I understand what you're
I mean,
saying, and I know I have all
that's
these
where we're
options.
at,
I just
though.
don't want to get to that spot, but
And
if
then that
that's
leaves it up to the commission.
true, and that's a good point, yes. I think you kind of have a consensus from us is that we'll scrap the attrition policy and we'll move towards leave it, we give departments X amount of dollars per year and what they do with it for hiring, and that's up to them.
But I'd like to see some parameters of, that way they know day one how they can operate and when they got to come, because that could change their thinking a lot. Like, I think you mentioned earlier, like, I've got 3 senior guys and 2 of them left. Well, do I need to hire 2 seniors? Maybe, well, if they're giving me all this leadway, maybe I want to train these guys the way I want them trained, so I might do entry-level 2 positions, or I might do two junior level, so I can get them trained the way I want them. If someone comes in senior all the time, you're not going to tell them how to change. They're not going to change much, So that's something to consider, that they're shooting themselves in the foot if they get too big.
I think that this might take care of I think what we need to do here is, I like the 90 days. It takes 90 days to get somebody. And we've got a lot more to discuss about the other piece of that, about here's your X amount of dollars. But today, I think we can go back to the 90 days. You can recruit in those 90 days, but we don't hire till the 90 days. Can everybody agree to that? Unless there's extenuating circumstances where it has to be, and then it comes before the commission, and we say, okay.
I can definitely get behind that, yes.
And I guess I'll just say, I'm not going to, it could come in front of the commission, but honestly, it takes us, I think about 75 days was on a short posting, just for, posting the position, getting it live, having it open, scheduling interviews and all of that. It takes 60 to 75 days. And so, if you say 90 days, it's actually helpful to HR in the sense that I can build a time frame that says this is how things are going to happen, that gets you a person on day 90, with a little flexibility, but that would be great to me. I don't see it, and I, like has been mentioned, it's probably not going to be much of a difference from it. Obviously, there are positions where if we say, look, we have got to have somebody tomorrow, as soon as we can, we can tighten those timelines, maybe to 45, 60 days, with the short posting, we get it, posted tomorrow, that kind of situation. And so I hear it as, well, it could come to the commission, but the reality of it is, most of that will just be on difficulty procedurally and not a lack of desire.
And that's fine, because when I look around this room, we have to have a certain level of trust amongst each other. So when I look at the HR department and Chris Ross and the elected officials, there has to be an element of trust. I don't know what your department does. I don't know what it takes to get done. I can't know everything about every department. That's why you're elected. That's why we appointed you, and that's why you're sitting in the seats you're sitting in. We have got to get that level of trust and go forward.
Very well said. So are you, just for sake of clarification here, are you saying you just want to move back to the 90-day policy, essentially? Yeah. And you don't want to go down the avenue of,
What I'm saying is, if they need to hire somebody and they can't wait to get it before the commission, we need to trust these people to hire them.
okay,
So that's, I mean, if it's typical for 75 days to hire someone, to get them in the seat, then 90, this 90-day thing, I mean, well, you know, you're wasting paper trying to write down that it needs to be 90 days if it's already taken 75 days to hire someone. I just think we need to move forward. We can't restrict, and we can restrict by action of this board. We can call a special meeting and take action. And I'm not trying to throw my gavel down and have power. I'm just saying it's that simple, you know? And we have Mr. Sanford draw up a new policy that gives them the parameters to work within that helps County Manager Spross. It helps the elected officials. Everybody knows. Less time on everyone else's part. So the 90-day thing, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it's unnecessary to put it in there because it takes 75 days to get somebody.
like Joe said,
They're not waiting 90 days that's what it takes to recruit and finish the process of hiring somebody. So it's 90 days anyways.
Yeah.
but that just gives Joe's the parameter
Just
to
goes
like,
with
that
the
actually,
time.
he can build a timeline, like he said. So yeah, it doesn't have to be in there, but it at least gives Joe where he can come up with a time frame, a timeline of how long each process takes. And it's set in policy.
And these guys will work together with the department heads and say, hey, I've got somebody in 30 days. That'll be a decision that they make.
But that's where I'm confused. I'm confused.
If it's a needed position immediately, we have to trust people to make that decision.
Okay,
So, but if it isn't, like and they all want to be efficient.
Okay, so help me understand, because I'm not understanding what you're saying. If you say they can't hire that person for 90 days, and we give them parameters to do certain things, but they need someone in 30 days, then you just said that they can hire them. Well, if we told them 90 days, wouldn't they have to come before the board to say we need to hire somebody within 30 days?
Well, we can write the policy any way we want to write the policy.
Yeah, we can do
I
whatever.
guess that's why I'm confused, because
I really don't think, and I'm just speaking for myself, but I really don't think the 90 days, if we were a hard 90 days, would be that difficult. If there's somebody that is special like that, we could come before the board, and the board could decide whether to make an exception.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's what I'm leaning towards.
Unless you need to hire them
If it's an emergency.
right now,
But right now, we would know that we can fill that position within 90 days. And if it needs to be less, then we could come before the board, and it'd be a team effort to decide is
Sure.
this appropriate.
I
Because y'all deal with the
understand
budget.
that, but I guess I'm still not understanding, if we set 90-day limit, that means you can't give them employment for 90 days. But if you need them in 30 days, you're gonna, what's the mechanism to get them in 30 days?
I think
We
the
can-
question at
but we come to the
hand,
board.
the question at hand for this board right up here is, do we want in, let's say they need a person in 30 days. Do we want to just give them the power to, and I'm sorry, I'm just referencing you guys because you're here in front of me, but do we want to just give them the power to say, yes, I need that person, hire that person? Or do we want them to come in front of us at one of our meetings and say, I need this person? Basically, we'd take over, in my opinion, the position of the review committee.
Which I'm fine with, but if we give them parameters to determine if someone's needed in 30 days, then the 90 days is irrelevant. Because if they really wanted to hire someone, they could make the case for 30 days and just hire them, and then we would be caught in the middle, per se, you know? So if we give them a 90-day policy and it takes 75 days to hire someone, that's not a big deal to me. If they want to hire someone less than 30 days, then we'd have to put in there that they have to come, get on the agenda and come before us to get,
I'm fine with that.
you know, if that's what you guys want
I'm
to do.
fine with
I'm
that.
fine with that as
But
well.
I'm okay with them as we previously talked too, so. What's the-
So do they have to come in front of this board before they start the recruitment process? Or can they start the recruitment process and then come to the board and say, I was going for 90 days, I found the perfect person, he can be here in 60 days, and then I'm asking for you guys to let me hire him in 60 days instead of the 90? So the recruitment process starts immediately upon vacancy.
And this-
And then, so that's not slowing that down at all, that process. And then if that person should be able to start earlier, then throughout that recruitment process, they can come to the board and say, we were doing the 90 days, we got the perfect person here, 60 days is when they can be here, can I get permission to bring this person on board?
Perfect.
Is that how that works?
I guess my confusion is this. So the recruitment process typically is like a posting. So there's like a time lane. So if you have somebody already ready to fill the position, that's not really through the recruitment process. That's like if you have somebody in the office that moves up or whatever. So I guess I'm confused on.
Then you'd have to come to the board.
Well, I guess my question is then those are those situations that come before the board, and then they want to usually start somebody at a higher level. So I guess I'm a little confused on, are we talking about posting, or are we talking about, because those situations exist all the time, whether, you know, you have somebody that needs to move up, or
That's
you
a
have somebody to fill
promotion.
that- Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You have somebody to fill that position. If you have somebody to fill that position when somebody leaves, that means you already have somebody in mind.
That-
That's not through the recruitment process.
But then
So I
you
guess
would,
I'm
then you would
asking-
start the recruitment process for the person that you moved.
Joe, could you address that?
So
please?
I'll
Those
just,
are those questions.
just for clarity, my expectation for the policy, and as it currently is in our attrition policy, an internal promotion would be allowed within the department at any time, and then the position that is being backfilled would have the delay. Which I think makes sense, right? I mean, if you have a person that's going to fill the position, then you fill the position with that person, and we only do the 90 days on the person that you are recruiting for. Because I don't think the intention of the board or anybody is to create a 90-day delay on a promotion. And so that's how I would craft it. I mean, some of this is going to have to be changed, and so I plan to, I'm sure I'll look
Yeah,
over the minutes and make sure I understand exactly what we're doing. But yes, if you were to say 90 days, I would expect that to be 90 days from an open recruitment position.
So any policy you have that is left for a determination leaves question, because then it might not always be handled in the same manner. So that's all I want to say.
That's confusing.
But don't we have an internal recruitment, an internal posting process for promotions as well?
We do, yes. And so any position, even if it's going to be an internal promotion position, still has to be posted for all people within that to apply. So it will not be an instantaneous, we can't just pick somebody and say you're it. It does have a procedure. It just typically takes less than the 90 days. It just takes less time because the positions are usually, instead of, say, being open for 30 days, they're usually open for 7.
And then I'd just like to ask the county manager's process, the question that you were asking them, how would you see it? How would you prefer it? What, for hiring someone?
As far as how I posed it, I think if you're going to say you can fill the position in 90 days, somebody should be able to recruit immediately upon the vacancy of that position. And if it so happens that that position can be filled before the 90 days because of a certain condition, the employee is quitting immediately or something like that, then they could come to the board and say, look, I posted, this person can be here before the 90 days, I'm asking you to allow me to hire that person before the 90 days is over or expires.
That's personally exactly where I want to be.
So it goes back to letting them do whatever they want to do. and it has nothing to do with 90 days. If they find
Not
someone.
necessarily. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
90
you can,
days-
you can say, "No, I'm sorry, you can't hire that person," and say, it's 30 days before the 90 days is over, that person's gonna have to wait. Now, I would argue that, but, I mean, you still have that control to be able to say that.
Do you guys have anything else?
What's your thought?
I need thoughts here. That's what's, I keep asking you guys, and I need thoughts or opinions. I mean, this.
I mean, I think our general consensus is this policy has ran its course. Putting another 90 days or even making a policy where you're saying 90 days again, it defeats the whole purpose. Like Manager Chris Press just said, if he has somebody in 60, then now he has to come to the board and get your approval that he can hire someone because it didn't meet the 90 days. If he has somebody, you're going to trust him and you're going to say yes. So why are we putting it back on the agenda? Back to the trust thing. Trust the people you have in these positions to do the job that you have put them in the position to do.
And I agree. And, when you say, who's really responsible for the budget at us? Who gets all the BS? Us. So there needs to be a little bit, and I agree, then I go back to trust. So if you can wait 90 days, we need to wait 90 days in budget times when it's bad.
But like we were saying, it usually takes at least 90 days to hire, so. That's
That
the new
argument
point. We can all
and-
agree on that.
I mean, I think, I can see Commissioner Blakey's point of like, why have a rule when just de facto reality is going to put you out at 90 days or thereabouts, 75 to 90? And so why have the rule if just reality is just going to provide that in all likelihood we're not going to get there until 75, 90 days? And so I can understand that. I think that's the point he's trying to make is like, why have a rule if it's not needed when reality is just going to set in no matter what. 9 times out of 10. Occasionally you're going to have somebody that you've found that you can get in there slotted. Great, but I think most times that's not the case. I mean,
I can agree with that, but somewhere in history, there was a reason this was made.
It was
So
called-
I wasn't here when it was made, but somewhere along the lines, there was some reason.
It was 2007 when the world collapsed.
But then it was revised in 2024.
Because we went through another budget crisis, yes.
And that's where I'm saying the board, we're in charge of the budget and we are responsible for the budget. And we can prove to the elected officials and to County Manager Spross, we have no money. This is the money we have. You need to take appropriate action. It's that simple. We've done our job. And then it's up to them to determine if they're cutting services and supplies or if they're cutting personnel.
But you've already approved the budget at the budgeting process, and if there's a vacancy, there's an assumption that there's going to be some savings. And so, I mean, I understand why you would want somebody to come back to the board if it's pre-90 days so that you can make that decision. But if the budget has been set and somebody vacates that position, whether it's 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days, there's a presumption of some savings anyway. And so that person is not going, that department head, that elected official is not going to go over their budget because they know they can't do that. But they're still operating within their budget, so they can say, well, I'm going to hire this person at 60 days. I've already saved 60 days worth of money. Now, where it gets a little prickly is if there's an advanced step placement because I've saved some money for 2 months and how that impacts next year's budget. And so I think that is a solid reason for the board to be involved in that kind of a decision so that you're forward thinking into subsequent budget years for things like that.
But keeping in mind, if we set parameters, hiring parameters, that sort of solves some of that problem, most of that problem. Because if they want to do something that could expand their budget or burden their budget in the future, that's when they get on the agenda to come to us and it's like, hey, this is what we want to do, this is why, and this is how we can prove it, and so forth. Is that correct? So by setting parameters, it's
Right, and again, obviously not all of this has been worked out in terms of what those parameters would be and how that would mesh in the future. Yeah, I think everybody has put sort of their thoughts on it. I'm going to just recap briefly where I think I'm hearing, and then we can sort of go from there in terms of making a decision at a future meeting when maybe some of those things are fleshed out. So on the hiring delay and attrition policy, what I'm hearing is we'd prefer to have no pre-recruitment delay. That there's should be a preference towards having 90 days between when the person vacates and the new position starts, and that you'd like to have that be 90 days standard, and that if there's going to be a deviation from the 90 days, that there is some method to waive that, whether that's to come directly to the board, whether it's to go to County Manager Spross, whether it's to do something different. Currently, the preference is to go to the board, and so that's the way I would draft that. As it relates to advanced steps on initial placements, as well as promotion, I think the desire I've heard from Commissioner Blakey is to have at least some sort of parameters that say, this is what we have approved, this is what we do approve, this is what we don't approve, and then, obviously if you want to deviate from that, you're going to need to come in front of the commission. Probably a piece on that would be related to anything that will have impacts on future budgets over the current would probably need some type of board action, right? So let's say you're replacing a person who's step 5, and you say, well, my parameters let me hire the new person at step 3, then you're within it. But if you say had someone leave at step 1 and you want to replace them with a step 4, even if that's within parameter, maybe that needs to come to the board. And I think that's all of the pieces I have. The only thing maybe that hasn't really been touched on is relating to filling vacancies at higher than entry-level position. So currently the default policy is when somebody in your department leaves, you fill that position at the entry level. So if legal secretary leaves, we hire a legal secretary trainee. If a senior DA leaves, a DA1 is hired. If a HR generalist leaves, an HR specialist is hired. Is that something that the board would like to keep in place or affirm, or would you rather leave that, change that to more of a discretionary thing like we've talked, where that's part of more of the budget to say you got to manage your own? What's the board's pleasure there?
I think before we can go to you got to manage your own, we got to go to that model, so I don't think we can
Right.
get there today, so.
Agreed.
I'm just curious on whether that's a model that you want, so that I can, or if we move to that model, would that be something you would want to see in that plan?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
they've got a budget,
I mean, it would fall back into those parameters. But I'd like to hear from County Manager Spross and the elected officials, your thoughts on if we presented each department head with your parameters. You like that idea? Is that a good idea? Is that a bad idea? That way you can go up to a certain level before you have to even come before us.
I mean, I'm going to do whatever the board decides to do. It sounds to me like we're taking a combination of two different things to try to make it work. You're saying the department heads and the elected officials have the discretion to do what they need to do, but there's also parameters set for them to have to operate that way. So to me, it's almost one or the other. I mean, look, everybody that's in this room is trustworthy. That's why they're here. And I think, you know, I was going to say this earlier, but I think the policy was put into place, that initial 90 days was for somebody to evaluate that position to see if it could be combined or eliminated, or technology. Everybody in this room that runs a department is doing that every single day through their course of operations to see what jobs are being done, how they're being done, where there's inefficiency and things like that. So I think eliminating that is long overdue. And again, I see it both ways. I think the department heads can make that decision for the current budget year, but they have to keep in mind what's going to happen in subsequent years. And if you decide I'm going to hire somebody at a step 5 because I've saved 90 days worth of money, that's great. This year's budget works great. But then the subsequent year, when there's only a marginal increase in revenue, how do you deal with that? Now you've made your bed. Now you have to decide, okay, am I cutting my services and supplies? Or do I have to furlough somebody? Do I've got to take 2 positions and make one of these full-time, part-time? I think that's all part of that process as you go through determining what you need for your personnel. And that's how I would handle it. I mean, if I'm going to make my bed, I'm going to live with it. As difficult as it may be in subsequent budget years, that's the decision that I made, and I have to live with it. Is it uncomfortable? Absolutely. But we're all in this room because we're paid to do uncomfortable things. So that's my opinion.
I just want to add from a structural, the statute has the policy about hiring in step 1. And from a payroll standpoint, we need documentation. So if it turns into this, oh, well, I think I should do it at 5, there's no documentation. So when we get documents and we have to present them to the auditor of proof as why we're paying these people, there needs to be documentation and it needs to follow policy.
And that's just another checkbox that we have in place to hold them accountable. Like they can't hire without, if the person's not qualified to be a step 5, then they have to show, so that would be like a red flag, like where you could say, hey, we got a problem here. So that's just another box to check. I'm okay with.
As long as there's documentation, and then the statute has to be changed because it's in Title III right now that way.
Who does the documentation have to come from? Is it documentation from the board, or is it documentation from an elected official, or is it documentation from a department head? Is it
At
specific?
this point in time, we get documentation for the advanced steps that comes from the board approving it because it's not in statute. So anything above ones that, or if somebody gets more than a 5%, we get documentation from the board for those. Hiring comes from employee action notice, and that would be, like, which should be the step 1 if it's replacing a step. If not, we need documentation within the payroll files, which are audited and
It's no different than what we've already been doing, right?
I really think a lot of this, if we go to a different model, that's where all this is, this is where I say there's a lot to flesh out. I mean, we can do something today for now, but that might change, and
But
so
we're
I almost
already
think
doing-
right now, we kind of,
We're already doing what she's talking about.
right, but I'm saying we kind of stay,
I guess what I'll say, I mean, I'll defer to Wade in terms of the agenda, but I mean, I believe that the full budget piece is not necessarily in it, but to the extent that it relates to whether or not, how you want to consider hiring processes in the future. If you would like to see an option that relates to a different budget process as it relates to the hiring piece, then you could make that recommendation and we'd bring it to you.
I would like to see that.
I think we'd have to put it on the agenda.
I'm sorry, I'd just like to say, I think it will be interesting to see once we have the comp study, will these advanced steps really be necessary? Because I think that's why it's been ramped up recently. So it'd be interesting to see afterwards if that kind of helps with those advanced steps. Do we need to do that once we get our wages where they're supposed to be?
And I had that written down from when Joe said that the very first time, is that, you know, it's really a non-factor right now because we might do the comp study and it readjusts everything where that step one, grade one is actually right on par, turns out. So now you're taken care of, so.
Yeah, and we haven't, I mean, this last year, I think is the first time I've ever had to go in front of the commissioners and ask for an advanced step placement since 2012. So that's, I mean, that's why, it's because we're out of step. It's the only reason we're there. Otherwise, I think we wouldn't have this issue. And honestly, historically, we haven't had an issue with the whole policy of like, put them at step one and then go to the commissioners if you think they deserve an extra step.
I always trust they deserve it. Can we pay for it?
Can we move forward? That's the
And-
biggest question.
Yeah, and typically we've been able to this point, so.
Agendized and we discussed it and voted, and you guys voted. I don't think it needs to be right now.
Yeah. So is that enough guidance, Joe,
Unless
for
Wade
you?
disagrees with me.
I want to hear from these three elected officials, what Joe talked about, that type of constraints and policy looking, is that satisfactory, is it not satisfactory?
We're all used to working within a parameter. It's called a budget. So that's what we usually work in. Like, I don't think any of us have actually went before. I mean, I haven't, and asked for an advanced step with someone. We have a process of steps in my office, and that's what we follow. So I have no problem with that.
I'm asking you your opinion on what Joe thinks he may shape the hiring policy to where the constraints that we're going to maybe put on each department.
As far as making our own
When
decisions,
we do, yeah, when we rehire,
I have no problem making my own decisions and being accountable for it.
Real quick, so there's no confusion here, Joe, or I guess I could do this too. It'd be a preference for a 90-day, you know, vacancy from when that person leaves, still. It'd be, you could appeal to the Board of County Commissioners, to us, you know, if you wanted it sooner than that. And advanced step placements are possible with parameters, but again, that might be taken care of with the comp study. Again, there's a lot of unknowns because of the comp study. Yeah, and if you fall outside those parameters, then you'd come to the board.
well, I guess what I'm saying is like when Sanford said, if you're going to hire someone and they have 1 to 3 years experience, you can do this, you can do this, you can do that without doing anything. It takes 75 days to hire someone, 90 days is irrelevant. So that's what we're asking is, we don't want to ask him to go spend a bunch of time and then come back and then the elected officials like, well, I don't want to, you know, we need your voice too. As County Manager Spross said, he can make it work and 90 days is come and gone. Is that what you said, sort of? The 90-day policy is sort of come and gone?
The 90-day wait to recruit,
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, is no longer, I mean, sure, it's nice to save money, but, you know, in the climate we're in right now, we're facing challenges hiring people, and adding more time to that certainly is not helping that. So, I mean, to me, I think it has served its purpose. The Board of County Commissioners, you know, retains ultimate control to say, we're not hiring any more people, that's it. You know, and with that in place, I think that's a big enough backstop to be able to say, you guys handle your hiring within your budget, keeping next year and the year after that in mind. And if we see that things are spiraling out of control in terms of revenue coming in or expenses going up, this is what we're going to do. And I mean, you're running a business, is how I see that.
Are you still confused?
Oh, and to answer your question, I have no problem coming to the board if I need to hire somebody before the 90 days.
I think we should just do away with the policy and just, because we're doing it as hiring from my office. I'll just use me as an example. If it's a vacated, we just go through that process. I contact HR, I need to get this, you know, advertised. I mean, that's basically the process. It's going to take however long. I stay within my budget because that's what I do. If something happens where I'm going to go outside of my budget, or I need something different from my budget, then I will bring it to the board, and that's how we normally would do it. So that's how I'm viewing this.
We've seen this happen in Linda's office before, and you don't want to tie somebody's hands, and you have a vacant position, and you have two really good candidates, and you hire one, and 2 weeks later, another person leaves, and you can contact this person to say, hey, we couldn't hire you for the first one, but there's a position available. You just don't want to tie somebody's hands to be able to do something like that.
Additionally, if you have staff in your office that's going to, move up to that new position, that whole process is like 30 days, with itself. So, our hands are tied because we go by those time frames with hiring, promoting, we work with HR, to get all of that, out there so that we can get, positions filled.
Yeah, we don't want even to have any parameters around that. Post it, abolish it. Trust these guys to do what's best within their budget and get rid of it. And
That's fine by,
if
again, I
it's
keep
already
looking
gonna
at you
take X
guys, what
amount
do
of
you
time.
guys want? You guys want it abolished, it's 90 days done.
No, we're good with
Ceases to
this.
We're in
exist.
agreement on that.
Yes.
okay, done.
There we go. Okay, so now that changes your, well, we haven't made the motion yet, but yeah, I think we're all in
Okay.
agreement up here.
So my understanding from that would be, the idea would be, we're going to let the time frame that it just takes to do it resolve this issue.
Be that 90 days, yep. Be that
And if-
70, whatever the 75 days.
Obviously, if there's a position that truly absolutely needs it, they can come to us and we can try and speed our process up, but there are limits.
I mean, Linda, how long did it take to hire the last, some of this stuff might go out past 90 days anyways, just to get people to apply in this climate.
And it took a long time. At one point, I was up to like one position, I think 6 months. So it is hard. When I was advertising for the first set, these are other scenarios. I had both people that we were going to hire backed out, so then we had to start that whole process over again. So it took a long time. Yeah, and it was because of wage. So I'm hoping the comp study there again has been mentioned here by several people. I think this will fix a lot of those issues going forward.
I think the sheer length of time it takes to hire somebody really is creating this attrition policy, this duration within the attrition policy for us. And some may hire in 45 days, some of the positions where you get a few more applicants, and some may take 6 months because it's an attorney that needs, certain credentials and you want to keep the recruitment open for a longer period of time because you're going to law schools and the bar association and things like that. I think it's just naturally going to develop into a period of time that is probably going to average out to 90 days anyway when you look at that. So.
Okay, so we're in agreement on that. I think that kind of takes care. Joe, is that enough guidance and you know where to kind of head with this? It's pretty easy, yeah.
And that's just, like, when someone's hiring someone, that's a inter-office communication between HR and them. If they needed you to speed it up, then that's between you guys. We don't need to be involved in it.
Right. Okay. And as long as everybody, sometimes the time it takes is the time it takes, right?
That's correct.
I can't make them not give 2 weeks' notice and things like that. But I appreciate it. I think that will resolve a lot of the frustration from folks who feel like, we're trying to throw up roadblocks when we don't. So.
Okay, with that, is there any other comments, questions, concerns?
I have one.
Go ahead.
This was very interesting. I've learned a lot today. And I learned a lot by listening to each one of you guys talk. It's frustrating, though. It's frustrating. And I know there's a whole lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that has to happen. What I do know, though, from a general public member who's out and about a lot, the county commissioners have hired Chris Spross to run a specific business. And his business is the Churchill County and all of his departments. The general public has hired these people to run their business. So we've got these, 5 businesses running? And then we have the Board of Commissioners who are in charge and have the power to oversee everything. I guess what I'm saying is I come from a point of view where all I know how to do is run a business. And these guys know that too. Let them run the business, get rid of that 90-day thing. It's run its course back from 30 years ago. Chris Spross knows how to do it. If he's got to fill something, fill it. Because that's what you do in the business. And if you make a mistake, you're going to have to live with that. And that's where he's created his own bed. So that was a good analogy. These folks have been here longer than the top five. The top five are the 3 county commissioners and the manager and assistant manager. These folks have already been proved they've been running a business, and the general public has trust in them. And meanwhile, we've got the county commissioners. We've got 3 smart guys there, and they know when to drop the hammer, and they're not afraid to drop it. So to me, you guys have solved your problem today already, and I'm glad I was here to witness this, but it was frustrating.
Any other comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
What do you?
It's going to be a motion to abolish the policy.
Can we do that today? Okay.
It's on there.
So for the policy, if that's the will of the board, you could move to abolish that policy today. For any of the code changes, obviously, that would be.
Yeah, but it would
something
be a
that would
motion to
change.
abolish the policy and direct Joe to come up with the new policy as discussed.
Correct.
Is that what you want? That's perfect. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to abolish the existing attrition policy as presented or as is in code, and direct Assistant County Manager Sanford to start the draft process for a new policy as discussed here today.
There wouldn't be a new policy.
Yeah, I'm confused.
It's not a new hiring delay. I believe policy relating to policies that would look like if we were to do a different structure of budget.
Direct Mr. Sanford to create some examples or possible ideas for a new maneuver forward for hiring.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, motion carries. Okay, at this time, is there any public comment? Seeing none, we stand adjourned. Thank you guys for being here.